Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, or if this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. So a lot has gone on in the past few weeks, and if you guys have been following along, you would know that I gave birth to my twin boys who are named Jack Ford and Ben Reed. I gave birth on January 20th, and so it has been a little bit over 3 weeks since I have delivered the boys. And in those past 3 weeks, I have been able to kind of reflect on my birth experience and let it sink in and soak in. And so today I'm going to finally be sharing the full story of the labor and delivery that I experienced with my twin boys. I did vlog this experience, but in that vlog, you do miss out on a lot of behind the scenes. I also was not allowed to actually film the actual delivery of the boys since I did give birth in an operating room, and I will explain all that in this video. But there's just a lot that you missed out on in that vlog. So if you guys have not seen that video and you do want to see that video, I will link that up here as well as down below for you to check out. But in today's video, I'm going to go into detail and in depth into my experience with the labor and delivery of my twin boys. If you guys can hear some noises, they are in their swings just over here behind me. So you may hear some grunting, some cooing, some crying maybe even. And if you can hear their swings swinging back and forth, that is what that is. But I will be sharing them with you guys later on in the video, so just stay tuned for that. But I hope you guys enjoy this video, and if you do, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, head on down there and subscribe. I appreciate that always. And if you're not following me on Instagram, make sure you do so you can stay even more up to date with my life as well as their life and see cute little pictures of them, because I post them pretty often over there. So go check that out if you are not following that already. But with all that being said, let's get into the video. So my labor and delivery story kind of starts a few days before I actually went into labor with the boys. So I'm going to kind of backtrack here a little bit. And we're going to start with the day that my mom flew in. Actually, the day before that my mom flew in. The day before my mom flew in was a Sunday, and that night when I got in the shower, I actually lost my mucus plug, or part of it. And when I explained that to my mom, she became frantic and really wanted to get up here to New York. She's down in Florida, if you don't know that. She wanted to get up here and get to New York so she could be here in any case that I would go into labor. So she was supposed to fly in on Thursday, and she actually moved her flight up to Monday, so the day after my mucus plug fell out. So she flew in on Monday, and that whole week we were frantically getting the house set up. Now, Harris and I have been in the process of moving into this house for a few weeks before any of this even happened, but we still had a lot to get done. So that whole week that my mom was here before I went into labor, we were frantically getting this house ready. We were building things for the boys, finishing up the nursery, getting furniture delivered, organizing this house, cleaning this house, everything like that. And throughout that week, I kind of was having a really tough time. I had hit the point in my pregnancy where my belly was unbelievably huge. I was super uncomfortable most of the day. Moving around was really difficult. Simple things like picking something up, sitting on the couch, getting up off the couch, just sleeping, anything like that was starting to get really, really tough. And so on top of moving, I was experiencing this pain and the uncomfortability of being so huge. And at this point, I was 35 weeks pregnant. So definitely getting up there in terms of, you know, the time period where it is common for you to go into labor with twins. So that entire week I was having a really hard time sleeping. My stomach was so itchy. I was experiencing a lot of nerve pain in my stomach, and I just really was not feeling great. And so that Friday we actually went into my doctor's office because I'd woke up that morning and was spotting a little bit, and I also was experiencing all this intense pain. And so I wanted to go into my OBGYN and just get checked out to make sure that everything was okay and just to kind of see what was going on. So we went into the doctor's on that Friday. I had an ultrasound, I got checked, and nothing. I was 0 centimeters dilated. I was not really effaced at all. The boys had so much room left, even though it didn't feel like they did, and they had a lot of fluid left. So it really didn't seem like labor was close. But, however, When I was getting checked, like my cervical exam, it was the most excruciating pain that I had endured thus far in my pregnancy. And I was really confused because I had spoken to friends who were pregnant. I've obviously watched videos and I had my mom there to ask her. And I was just like, was that supposed to be as painful as it was? Was this cervical exam supposed to be excruciating? I explained it to her like having knives scratch along the inside of my cervix, and she was like, no, it usually is just pressure pain. It's never really excruciating pain. And so that's when I hopped on Google and I kind of came to the conclusion myself that he had stripped my membranes. And it was kind of weird when we were leaving the office, he had said, you know, who knows, maybe I will see you this weekend. And I had asked him if there was any way he could induce me earlier because of the pain that I was in. And he told me that medically there was no reason for me to be induced and he wouldn't do so until 38 weeks. But there was a possibility he'd be seeing me this weekend, which to me was a little strange that he would say that. But he did say that if nothing did happen this weekend, to drink castor oil, which to me was always an old wives' tale to kind of induce labor, but my OBGYN actually told me that if I wanted to induce labor on my own, to go home and drink castor oil. So I was at the point where I was going to do literally anything and everything to induce labor just because I was so uncomfortable. So my grandma actually went out and picked up castor oil and brought it over to my house that night, and so we had it on deck if I had decided to use it. So that was a Friday. Got my membrane stripped, or so I thought I did, bought the castor oil just in case, and Saturday and Sunday came, and again I was extremely uncomfortable, had trouble sleeping, was kind of experiencing some contractions, and I was tabbing them, but it was nothing that was super regular or anything that was super intense, and so I didn't even know myself if they were contractions. But I did buy a yoga ball at this point and I was bouncing on the ball, and I also had bought red raspberry leaf tea, I think that's what it's called, and I had started drinking that twice a day. But I had not yet taken the castor oil, and Saturday night came and we had friends over and I was explaining to them how uncomfortable I was and how I just wanted to have the boils already and I was so over being pregnant. And my mom looked at me and said, listen, Monday is Martin Luther King Day. Harris is off from work. We have nothing to do. Why don't we wake up Monday morning and drink the castor oil? You'll drink it right in the morning. It had said online to drink it on an empty stomach. And so Harris and I all got together and said, all right, Monday morning, if nothing had happened by then, I was going to drink this castor oil and we were going to do everything possible to get me into labor. So Sunday then came and I woke up Sunday morning and my underwear was completely wet, but my pajama pants were not wet and the bed was not wet. So I had thought for a second that maybe possibly my water had broken, but then there was a piece of me that was like, it wasn't enough water for it to feel like my water broke. You hear what it sounds like in the movies and you hear other people's experiences, and to me it just didn't seem like enough to constitute my water breaking. Maybe I had just had some watery discharge and it was a lot of it. That's what I was thinking. But I did text my mom and I did tell her that, you know, I woke up and my underwear was wet, but the bed wasn't, and I was a little confused. And I also had texted my friend Catherine, who had delivered her son 5 weeks earlier, and explained to her what I was experiencing. And she just told me, you know, maybe just keep an eye on it. You know, she didn't really even know because she had her water break in the hospital when she was already being induced. So she really didn't know. I really didn't know. My mom really didn't know. And so I just went on with my day. And that day we went to Harris's house to finish packing up some things to bring over to this house, and we had planned to go to Home Goods after we went over to his house. So we went over to his house, we packed a few things up, we had lunch with his parents, and we were getting ready to leave his house and head over to Home Goods. And that is when I bent over to pick up something to put in my suitcase, and I stood up and I felt a small gush. It was by no means a large gush, but it was enough to wet my underwear completely through. Again, I didn't say anything to Harris or his parents or anything like that. I just went to the bathroom and checked to see, you know, was it blood? Was it more mucus plug? What was it? But it was nothing. It just looked like my underwear was wet, but nothing else was coming out. So I was really confused still at this point what was going on. And when I had woken up and felt it in the first place, it was around 8 o'clock in the morning. And when I had felt it this time, it was close to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So we got in the car and Harris was like, all right, are we going to go to Home Goods? And I said, you know what, maybe we shouldn't go to Home Goods. And he was like, why? And I kind of explained to him what I was feeling. And even he said, like, isn't it supposed to be like a larger gush? And I was like, I don't really know, because it's different for everybody else. Like, it's different for everybody. So at this point I texted my mom and she was like, maybe you should just call your doctor and just ask, because we were at the point where people go into labor with one baby and most certainly with 2 babies. And we had gone to the doctor a few days before and he said, maybe I'll see you this weekend. And so she just told me to call the doctor to kind of get some peace of mind and ask him what he thought. So it was around 2 o'clock when I placed my first phone call to the doctor. And since it was a Sunday, I had to call his after hours hotline and then they would page him and he would call me back. So this is where things kind of got a little frustrating. I also feel like I'm talking really, really fast, so I'm really sorry if that is the case, but I feel like there's a lot for me to say and I just want to say it in kind of the least amount of time as possible. I don't want this to be like a 45-minute video, but if I'm talking really fast, you can always slow the video down. I know some people who do that, you can slow the video down, but I'm sorry if I'm talking a million miles a minute. That is just what I do, and I'm sure you guys, if you've been following me along, you know that. But anyway, so 2 o'clock was when I placed my first phone call to my doctor, and an hour passed and I had not heard anything back from him. And at this point we were back at my house. We did not go to Home Goods, and I put a panty liner on to see if I would soak through it, because I went online and they said if you put a panty liner on and you soak through it within a certain amount of time, most likely your water is breaking. So I did that, and I also was sitting on the yoga ball bouncing just to, you know, kind of move things along if this was what it was. So 2 o'clock, first phone call, an hour goes by, nothing. 3 o'clock, I place my second phone call, an hour goes by and nothing. 4 o'clock, I place another phone call, and this is when the operator or the person who took my phone call said that the database had no information of me ever calling at 2 o'clock, ever calling at 3 o'clock. So it was basically as if I had never placed these calls to my doctor. And so at this point, I urged them, you know, I think my water had broken. I don't know how long it's been. I think I might possibly be in labor. Like, please relay this message to him. And another hour goes by and nothing. So 5 o'clock, I finally placed my last phone call and I urge them again, like, I think I'm in labor. I need to get in contact with my doctor. At the very least, I need to know what hospital to go to, because my doctor is affiliated with 2 different hospitals. And so it's not like I could just go to the one hospital and it was a guarantee that he would be there. I still needed to know what hospital to go to. So finally, a little bit after 5, I would say, close to 6, I had received my phone call back from my doctor, and he had told me to head over to the hospital and get checked out. That's all he said to me. And so it was kind of a surreal feeling at that moment to know that I was heading to the hospital and possibly going to be delivering my boys. So I kind of just looked at my mom and was like, so now what? Like, is this it? I was like, I still need to pack some things in my hospital bag, and Harris had not packed a hospital bag or anything like that. So she was like, go pack your things, I'll get the car ready, and let's head out. So that is what we did. Harris and I took one car, my mom took my car, because my car is the car that had the car seats in it for the boys. And so probably close to 6 o'clock is when we headed off to the hospital, and I had gotten there, I got paged in, I made my way up to labor and delivery, and that is when they started running some tests to see if it was actually my water that had broken, because they still didn't even know. So I had to do like a cough test and nothing was coming out. And finally they decided to do some swab test. There's some protein that they test for in amniotic fluid to see if it's truly amniotic fluid. And so that is what they did. And, you know, I got dressed in a hospital gown. They started trying to get the monitors on me to monitor the boys' heartbeats, get a contraction monitor on me. And so this was taking a little bit of time. And finally a nurse came into the hospital room and was like, okay, so we were going to start you on some antibiotics just because, you know, your strep test did not come back yet, because I had got my strep test done on that Friday when I went to go see my doctor to get things checked out. I was not supposed to get it done until the next Tuesday. So I got it done on Friday and the test results were not in. So she was like, we're just gonna start you on some antibiotics. We're gonna get some fluid in you and IV and everything like that. And my mom and Harris and I were all looking at each other like, wait a second, does this mean that my water actually broke? And the nurse was like, no one came in here and told you. I should have started off with that. I should have opened up with that. yes, it seems like your water has broken. It is probably broken pretty high up on one of the sacs, possibly baby B, and that's why it was kind of coming out at like a weird rate. So I got my IV. They started me on antibiotics just in case I was strep positive. They didn't really know at this point, like I said. And we got a game plan going. So around 8 o'clock at night, they decided to put some kind of medication up at my cervix that was supposed to soften my cervix, and they said that this was going to be a 12-hour process and that all this medication was supposed to do was to soften my cervix. It was not really going to throw me into labor, and so it was going to be a long process. It was going to be a long night. So a 12-hour process. They're starting it at 8 o'clock at night. We thought that nothing was going to happen until 8 o'clock the next morning, and I decided to send Harris home that night to get some sleep because I knew if I was going to have the twins the next 2 nights in the hospital, he probably was not going to get much sleep. So I sent him home, and my mom decided to stay and sleep in the hospital with me throughout the night. You know, we really didn't think much was going to happen, and so between the times of 10 and 11, I was allowed to eat, and then after 11 o'clock, Harris decided to go home, and at 12 o'clock is when I got some Stadol. That's the name of it. I got some Stadol to kind of help with the cramping pain that I was feeling from the first medication that they put in me, and also to kind of help me get some sleep. So they gave me that at 12 o'clock, and a little while after that, I had told my mom that I started to feel some more pain, and she decided to get up and look over at the contraction monitor that I was hooked up to, and she turned to me, and the look on her face, it was just like, oh my God. She was like, do you feel this? And I was like, what? She was like, you're having contractions right now. And in the same breath, 3 nurses rushed into my labor and delivery room and told me that they needed to get whatever the medication was out of me. It was basically like a long string they inserted into my cervix, that they needed to get it out of me because it had started to throw me into labor and I was beginning to contract on my own. Now the game plan was for me to have this medication in me for the 12 hours and then in the morning to begin Pitocin. All right, quick intermission. If you hear any gulping, baby Jack is eating. Ben just ate, so if you hear any burping or hiccuping or anything, that's what that is. But basically, I was supposed to get started on Pitocin the following morning after 8 a.m. However, I had started going into labor on my own and contracting completely on my own. And so they took that medication out and I was left to labor on my own. And around 6 o'clock in the morning, I would say, possibly, after a second dose of Stadol and starting to feel some pain again, I got checked and I was, I think, between 3 and 4 centimeters dilated. And at that point, they decided to give me my epidural just because I was progressing a lot quicker than they had thought I was going to. And so they wanted to make sure they had enough time to give me my epidural. So around 7 o'clock in the morning, Harris had returned to the hospital and I was being prepped for my epidural. And both my mom and Harris could not be in the room when I got my epidural. I was completely alone for it. And to be completely honest, the epidural was the hardest part of the entire experience for me because I had some adverse reaction to it. I think that's what it was. Basically, they have to test to make sure that everything is in the right location in your spine, I guess. And right before they were getting ready to test to see if it was in the right spot, the anesthesiologist did tell me that there was a very small chance that I could feel like I was getting struck by lightning. And unfortunately, that is what happened to me. Right as they hit to test where it was, I started to feel like my entire body was being struck by lightning. I felt every nerve basically go off at the same time, and it was such a painful experience. I screamed so loud. Now, thank God I had the nurse that I did. She was the sweetest, most loving, kind, caring woman I've ever met in my entire life, and she was exactly the type of nurse that I needed. She held me really tight, reassured me, told me everything was going to be okay, because in my mind I thought I was being paralyzed, to be completely honest. It was so painful. I didn't even know what to do or how to react. And so after that happened, they readjusted it. They were able to get it in the right location. I got taped up, they started the drip, and I had gotten my epidural. And so my mom decided to leave the hospital at this point to go home and to shower and to get ready for the rest of the day because it seemed like I was going to be having the boys that day, which was Monday the 20th. Harris had returned, like I said, and him and I decided to lay down, watch some TV, and take a nap. And by 10 o'clock in the morning, I was waking up because I started to feel pain once again. And I didn't know if like the drip had run out or the epidural, like I needed more of it. I don't even know. I called a nurse in and I asked, and she had said, you know what, let's go ahead and check you because based on the contraction monitor, you're having very frequent, strong contractions close together. Let's go ahead and check. My mom had returned at this point and we all took bets or guesses as to how many centimeters dilated we thought I was. And so I think I guessed 6. My mom guessed 7, maybe Harris guessed 5, something like that. We all guessed 5, 6, and 7. So I got checked by the midwife and she had said, does anyone else want to guess how far along she is? And one of the nurses was like, let me guess, 10 centimeters dilated, and I was. So I basically progressed very quickly from having the first medication put in, having it taken out at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and then, you know, having to get my epidural that morning, and just 3 hours later basically being ready to go. So I forgot to mention that at this point, once they realized I was 10 centimeters dilated, I had to get my water broken for baby A. So at that point, I started practice pushes. They called my doctor. Harris's mom had gotten to the hospital. Now Harris's mom, my mom, and Harris were all going to stay with me during my delivery. And like I mentioned, I had to deliver in an operating room just in the off chance that one or both of the twins needed to be removed via C-section. They had to have me all ready to go in an operating room. So Harris's mom, my mom, and Harris all had to suit up in like scrubs, I guess you would say, to enter into the operating room. A few practice pushes later and I was being wheeled into the operating room. Now, it was such a surreal experience delivering in an operating room. There were so many people in there. There had to be like 30 people in there because each baby had a team of people. There were 2 resident students who asked my permission to come into the room. There was my doctor, the midwife, the anesthesiologist, nurses, all sorts of people, plus Harris's mom, my mom, and Harris. Like, it was crazy how many people were in there and how surreal it felt. Now, I thought I was going to feel completely nervous and scared once they told me that I was ready to go, but I didn't even think about that. I just wanted to get them out. I was so ready to push. Your body truly knows what it's doing because I just knew I had to get them out. I knew I had to push and I knew I had to deliver them. So I entered into the operating room. I continued pushing, and a few contractions later, baby Jack came out at 11:39 a.m. and 13 minutes later is when baby Ben came out. Now, within that 13 minutes, I was ultrasound to make sure that Ben was not flipping. My doctor had literally reached up inside me to readjust Ben because he was coming in at kind of a strange angle. I gave a few more pushes and out came Ben. Now, delivering Ben was definitely more painful than delivering Jack, just because I think my uterus could contract so much harder down on him now that Jack was not in there to kind of buffer the contractions. But that was definitely more painful. Delivering Ben was a lot more painful, but both of them came out very quickly, very easily. A few pushes and they were out. I probably was pushing, including practice pushes, probably just about an hour. And before I knew it, I was being stitched up. I did have to get 4 stitches because baby Ben did come out with his hands up, and both babies did come out facing like upwards. Usually when a baby comes out, they're facing downwards, but both my babies were facing upwards, which apparently is harder to deliver, but I had no clue that that was going on. And Jack also came out with the cord wrapped loosely around his neck once. Bless you, baby. But I did not know that at the time, and I actually didn't know that until I went to the pediatrician the day after we returned home from the hospital, and he was the one who told me that Jack's cord was wrapped around his neck once loosely. But both boys were completely healthy when delivered. I did originally think that they had to have been observed for 8 hours in the NICU, but after a few more tests, the team of people decided that didn't have to happen, and I was able to have my babies right away with me for the remainder of my stay in the hospital. Now, neither of them were jaundiced at the time, but upon returning home from the hospital and going to the pediatrician, they are a little yellow, so I do just have to stick them in front of a window. But other than that, they are super healthy. Jack was born at 5 pounds and 1 ounce. Ben was born at 5 pounds and 4 ounces, so definitely smaller than I originally had thought. And once I returned to my labor and delivery room. I had to return to that room first before I could head to the recovery room. I was asked to urinate and go to the bathroom, and unfortunately after 2 failed attempts, I did have to get a catheter to drain my bladder because they do pump you with so much fluid when they give you your epidural, and so I had to be drained with a catheter, which was pretty painful because at that point my epidural had worn off, and so I felt the catheter go in. But once my bladder was drained, I was moved into my recovery room, and honestly recovery really wasn't as hard or terrible as I thought it was going to be. I was not as swollen as I thought I was going to be. I was not in as much pain. Getting up and down from bed was of course hard, and I was definitely sore and a little exhausted, and so I was moving very slowly. And to me, the hardest thing was that empty feeling. My belly was so big, and to have both babies come out and just be completely empty, it was a really strange feeling to bend over or to move and to have my belly move. It was just such a strange feeling. That probably was the hardest part for me, but all in all, my labor and delivery was definitely quick. It went so smoothly. It was picture perfect in my mind. I was able to have both my twins vaginally, 13 minutes apart, just a few pushes for each, no real complications other than maybe Jack's cord being wrapped around his neck. But like I said, I didn't even know that that was a thing. Everyone at the hospital was so amazing. I think that my hospital definitely added to my experience, and it being a positive one, because like I said, that nurse that I had for the entirety of my delivery, she was seriously the sweetest woman ever, and she actually came and visited me the next day before she left like her shift to check on me and make sure I was okay. But everyone in the hospital was amazed that I was able to deliver how I did and how quickly I did and how easily I did. And yeah, I hope I didn't miss anything. I feel like my thoughts are all over the place, but like I said, I had some time to kind of have this sink in, and I've definitely told this story to so many people, but I had a really quick, easy, spontaneous twin labor and delivery. And like I said, the hardest part was the epidural. Now, I would so 110% do it all over again, but the epidural definitely is going to scare me the next time that I have to get that done, just because of what happened to me this time. But yeah, I think that's it for my labor and delivery experience with my twins. Now, when Jack is done eating, I will give you guys a little glimpse at what the boys look like. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope I didn't talk too fast, and I hope it wasn't all over the place. Hope you guys could kind of follow along, and I hope I didn't miss anything, but I really hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, head on down there and subscribe like I said. And with that being said, we will see you in my next video. Bye guys. So it is actually the next day. I forgot to take a clip of the boys yesterday when I got done filming, so their outfits are different, but this is baby Ben snoozing away in his swing. Both boys just ate. So this little guy is Ben, and then over here we have little Jack, who is also snoozing away. It is so insane to me that these two little boys were inside me, that I grew these, and that they're gonna turn into little people. It just blows my mind every day that I stare at them. But little Jack and little Ben.